new developments in Haiti, and this is crazy. So, okay. As you guys know, Haitian President Jovenel Moïse was assassinated. And obviously there are a lot of questions about who and what and why, and we still don't have a lot of answers here. So first thing we learned, we saw some of those videos. We saw that his own security really didn't seem to put up much of a fight. That's still very much a question mark of why that would be the case. We learned that there was a Miami area security firm run by a Venezuelan immigrant that appears to have, and some of this is according to the Haitian government, take with a grain of salt, but appears to have hired a lot of ex-military Colombians and also a couple of Haitian Americans who claim they served as translators to actually serve as mercenaries and carry out that plot. Then yesterday, as I brought to you, the Haitian government is pointing the finger at this Haitian-born Florida doctor, so Haitian but lives in Florida, and says he's a doctor, although there's some questions about whether he's actually has a medical license in the U.S., appears to have filed for bankruptcy. There's more and more sort of sketchiness about who this guy is and what he exactly was planning, but what the Haitian government, the Haitian police chief is saying is that he wanted to have himself installed as president. How was that going to work? How did he think that was going to work? I don't know.
Given the history, I guess it kind of makes sense.
But they're saying, okay, he hired these mercenaries. Another question is they were very highly paid. How did he afford that when he just declared bankruptcy? So the story is he hired these mercenaries, wanted to install himself as president. They assassinate Moïse. I don't know what they thought was going to happen next, but that's the story that we learned yesterday. So the latest information, according to CNN, we can throw this tear sheet up on the screen, is that some of those involved in this assassination plot were previously U.S. law enforcement informants. The DEA, on the record, said that they were aware that, yes, some of the assailants, some of the assassins here, had served as informants for them. One in particular, who apparently, after this assassination went down, called into the DEA to be like, what do I do now, guys? And they were, hey, go turn yourself into the authorities.
Yeah. And the FBI, too.
There also, according to CNN, were confidential informants for the FBI involved here as well. We know the most about the DEA informant guy, and there's some new reporting from the Miami Herald that they've been really at the bleeding edge of the reporting with regards to what's going on in Haiti right now. Some reports that this DEA informant had been involved in some really large and significant operations with regards to Haitian drug traffickers. A guy named Guy Philippe in particular, this informant was involved in helping to bring him down. That dude had actually just been elected to the Senate, and they got him just a few days before he was going to be sworn in, because if he had been sworn in, then he would be immune from prosecution.
Right.
So anyway, this person is involved, and then we don't know anything about the FBI informant or informants who were apparently also involved. But very strange turn of events that these are the types of people who were involved, who had been working with our government, and now were involved reportedly in the murder of the Haitian president. So that's where we are right now. You'll recall part of why this is significant is we played for you the first day we covered this story, some of the videos from the scene that were immediately perplexing, where you have people with American accented English saying that they're DEA agents as they're going into the president's home to murder him. Let's take a listen to that video again so we can recall what that was like.
No.
This is the DEA operation. Let's just put together, sir. Little by little, yes, see that through.
So obviously the DEA says they didn't have anything to do with us. When this was going down, some of them may have been informants for us previously. This was definitely not on our behalf. But that video was the first thing that we were like, this is really weird.
This what makes sense, though. the fact that they might have made it sound really legit is because maybe one of them were informants, right? So maybe they've been on raids in the past.
So they knew how to do it,
and they knew the protocol. And as you talked about, there are actually DEA raids in Haiti all the time. And so if they could replicate what it would look like if they had previously worked with the DEA, it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
there's a whole lot going on here. And so it all comes back to there's these Colombian suspects who were actually killed by police, who had links to a security firm which is based in Florida but is owned by a Venezuelan national who was hired by this Haitian doctor who didn't have any money, who was also working in Florida, who wanted to be president of Haiti. And yeah, that's kind of the clearest picture that we have. Oh, and some of the people involved were U.S. government informants, so much so, I mean, considered informants of the highest level who were involved in some high-profile operations. So I don't know about this whole thing. There's a lot going on here. It seems like that Netflix movie I once watched about a Russian guy who stole or wanted to buy a submarine and sell it to the Colombian drug cartels. There seems to very likely, what is all this? It's an intersection of drug trafficking, political corruption, the DEA, which has its hands all over, you know, all of these things, and just a really screwed up country in Haiti. I think if you put all that together, you get some wild plot like this one. Whether there's a conspiracy, maybe. I mean, it's certainly possible, but we don't have any evidence, at least, to suggest that yet.
One thing we do know, obviously, is that even as Moise was reportedly incredibly corrupt and was, for sure, this part is definitely true, ruling by decree, had effectively decided casually to overstay his term, something, again, that the U.S. government, for some reason, decided that they would support. There is a massive political and developing humanitarian crisis in a nation that already was really in a political and humanitarian crisis and a violence crisis as well, where these gangs and these thugs really rule the streets in Port-au-Prince. The political situation is such that, you know, the dude who seized control, and I've explained this before, but I think it's important to understand, the guy who seized control, who was the prime minister, Moise had just fired him and was planning on bringing into office the following week a young neurosurgeon, apparently, who was politically inexperienced. Right. So even the guy who's trying to claim control and trying to use some of the U.S.'s words to say, look, I'm the rightful, you know, president now, and you got to listen to me. And he's the one who asked the U.S. for troops to come in, which, by the way, the Biden administration has not done yet, but also hasn't ruled out, which, again, is a terrible idea. So it's not clear that this guy is the legitimate leader. You have only 10 elected members of the legislature at all because Moise had overstayed his term and didn't call for election. So you only have 10 legislators writ large. The judiciary, which is powerful in the country, and there's also multiple constitutions. Under some versions of the Constitution, the Chief Justice would be the rightful successor. Well, first you had a lot of judges resign en masse over Moise overstaying his term. And then the Chief Justice died of COVID about a month ago. Wow. So really everywhere you turn, it's question marks and disaster and, you know, just a complete power vacuum in terms of what is going to happen next politically. And it's truly heartbreaking. I mean, the people of this country don't deserve this. They don't deserve any of it. And I was talking to someone who's kind of an expert in the country, and obviously, like, the drug trafficking understandably gets a lot of attention here and is central to the gangs and the grift and the corruption, all of that. But what they were telling me is that one of the primary political grifts in Haiti is actually to accept bribes from different importers to allow them to bring in their goods without paying the import tax. So to bring in, they call it contraband, but it's you know, normal goods, sodas and chips and whatever they want to import. And so that's one of the primary grifts. So when you talk about political power in Haiti, you're also talking about a lot of money at stake. Yeah. And that's, you know, could be at the center of who wanted this power, who was Moise at odds with, who was hoping to be able to come in and fill the vacuum? Those are the sorts of questions that people are asking. And again, one big question mark here that should be easily resolvable by the surveillance cameras within Moise's residence is, what happened to his security personnel? Not a one of them was injured or wounded. There's no appearance that they fought or resisted at all. Was the DEA ploy really so effective that they just stood down and did absolutely nothing? Or were they in on it? Some of the legislators in Haiti are suggesting in radio interviews that perhaps the security personnel themselves were in on the job. So that's some of the speculation that's out there. Again, the latest reporting is that you have the DEA confirming that at least one confidential DEA informant who seems to have been involved in some high-level drug trafficking stings. That person, was involved in the assassination plot. You also have indications there were FBI informants involved. That's the very latest we know, and we're definitely going to continue to follow it because it is just, first of all, it's really important to know what's going to happen in that country, and second of all, just a wild story to understand who and what and how and why this all transpired.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.